I'd like to call the Tuesday, October 18 Planning and Policy Committee to order. First thing this morning will be public comment. Is there anyone here for public comment? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent items. I'm looking for a motion to approve today's agenda along with approval of the minutes of September 22.
So moved.
Mr. Chair, just on the agenda, if you wanted to add the
Yes,
purchase of development rights program.
thank you, John. Again, under action items on number 2, we moved from Finance Committee to this committee called Tuesday, October 18. It's all
It does that a lot. It just repeats himself.
Right, I heard that first time.
They shall go all over again.
Okay,
Groundhog Day.
are we ready? All right. So we'd like to add the purchase and development rights program 2023 scoring criteria to today's agenda. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second,
Any,
I made the motion.
okay. Any additional questions or concerns? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign, motion passes. Now, under action items, number 1. The motion is to, it's for the Ottawa County Central Dispatch Authority. The motion is to approve and forward to the Board of Commissioners the restated agreement and resolution to allow the Ottawa County Central Dispatch Authority to enable all citizens who receive the Ottawa County Central Dispatch Authority services to vote and be levied the same property tax, including the portion of the city of Holland that is located in Allegan County.
So moved. Or
We have a motion and support. John, you want to elaborate on that, please?
Yeah, this is basically since the Central Dispatch Authority was first incorporated, an Act 57 was passed that allows 2 or more municipalities to create a law enforcement agency such as Central Dispatch and confer upon that what we'll call municipality the power to seek a millage across the authority's geographic service area. So this would allow basically, if approved, Central Dispatch to levy its own millage for 911 services that would also include the portion of the city of Holland that's in Allegan County. Currently, the county itself levies the millage. We can't levy a millage outside of the county borders.
So this is not a new tax. Okay.
No, in fact, this would basically, if this goes through, the county would no longer be levying a 911 millage. It would be the Central Dispatch Authority that would levy the 911 millage, and it would include all of those areas in its boundary, including the portion of City of Holland that's in Allegan County.
So prior to this, the people in Allegan County have not paid the millage?
No, they pay a telephone surcharge,
Oh, I see.
and that would go away
Sure.
in replace of this.
So you're talking about the city of Holland, that's everything south of 32nd.
Yes.
Where are they?
Halligan. We call it.
Halligan?
Halligan.
Yeah, there you go. What about, okay, I know the fire stations, okay, I'm talking about Zeeland Township. They run into Overijssel Township. So when the people in Overijssel Township on the northern end, they call 911, who are they getting? And are they paying for that or not? I mean, you're working at the borders.
Yeah, let me just, from the very beginning of 911, we had multiple issues with cross jurisdiction. Which is why in the original Ottawa County plan was approved by Allegan, Kent, and Muskegon, because we were the first in the area to have countywide 911. Over time, the phone companies were able to split right down a street even where those calls would flow.
That was landlines.
Landlines, that's true, okay. But now they have GPS and they'll still, at first, you never know where your 911 cell phone would go. It could go to Grand Rapids.
Yeah.
But now they've got pretty sophisticated to coordinate with GPS where that goes, okay?
Okay, yeah.
But until recently, on the funding side, we had, the problem we have was the operational surcharge, which we've never charged as a county. We've always been funded through property tax. But Allegan has to levy that charge and they get the revenue. So they get the revenue from Halligan, even though they don't provide the services. Now, we've had an agreement for years. Recently, we discovered they were only applying that agreement to landlines. We corrected that. But in that agreement, we facilitated this. This isn't going to be operational until 2025 or 6.
Yeah.
When our millage expires. So nothing's going to change. Allegan has agreed until we go to an Act 57 millage in Allegan, they will continue to assess and give OCCDA all the revenue because it's providing all the 911 service. They've also agreed that when property tax gets levied in Halligan, they won't get double charged on their phone bill and on their property tax, but they will redefine their service district in their plan so that Halligan is part of Ottawa and not part of Allegan for 911. So we've coordinated it at that level. This then gives OCCDA the ability to put a millage up in Halligan, the same rate as the rest of the county, and actually to levy it. So it's a positive thing. We've coordinated it so no one gets hurt. It is a little bit of a shift of taxing power from the Board of Commissioners to OCCDA, but they should be the ones, frankly, because they know what they need. It kind of skips the financial loop for the county, and then we appropriate everything over. It kind of makes it more direct. People, OCCDA, millage revenue goes right to them and they spend it.
Yeah, the current millage expires in 2028.
2028. So we're getting ready. Before I leave, we're tying Halligan down and we're fixing what has always been a thorn in our side. That complicating factor. I know Holland's very much in favor of this because, you know, all their citizens get to vote. They all get treated the same. They're getting the same services. So it really is kind of an equity issue.
Has no impact on Grand Haven financially. And for us, it means we're one less millage that we ourselves are levying.
Well, Allegan has been collecting the revenue, the sub-surge, right?
On the
Yeah.
phone surcharge.
Yeah, the phone companies pay it to Allegan.
So have we been reimbursed back from Allegan?
Well,
this time?
We discovered that the years old agreement that I drafted, which predated even wireless. Okay, they looked at the agreement and said, oh, that just applies to landlines. So they were taking the cell phone money from Halligan. And we said, no, that you don't provide any services, you can't take a fee. That's a fee, not a tax. You can't take that. So they've agreed that we clean that agreement up between OCCD and Allegan. And I put a clause in there that enabled this so that when we go to property tax, they won't get double dipped.
Any additional questions for John or Doug? Okay, we have a motion and support. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, the same sign, motion passes. Number two, regarding the purchase of development rights, and the motion is to approve and forward to the Board of Commissioners the 2023 purchase of development rights program scoring criteria. Becky, you want to talk about that?
Sure. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yep, you see me every year about this time for the same purpose, for the scoring criteria that we use to select our properties for farmland preservation. Under the ordinance, we have to review it every year and get the Board of Commissioners approval. It's a good exercise because, as you know, our funds are really limited to preserve farmland. So we want to do the very best job that we can, selecting the very best property that we can. We did a kind of a major overhaul in the scoring criteria. I think it was in 2019. that really made it fit pretty nicely for what we want to do. We haven't changed it a lot since then, but we do go through and review it every year. We do monitor other communities and what they use and just kind of best practices. But it's really important to us programmatically to have really good, robust scoring criteria, because we do have landowners that are, you know, really, really wanting to preserve their land. And if they don't get selected, sometimes we get a phone call and we have to walk through that scoring with them point by point. So we want it to be really high quality, something that we can really get behind and explain very transparently, you know, why we selected this property and not this property. So it's a really good exercise to do this every year. So that's what the purpose of having this on the agenda is to get it approved so we can go forward to 2023. So
I'll make the motion to approve. We don't have a motion on the floor yet. Okay.
I'm glad you did.
Roger.
But basically, the motion would be to approve and forward to the Board of Commissioners the 2023 Purchase of Development Rights Program scoring criteria. I think that's what you had said, Roger. Right?
What I said, absolutely.
So we have a motion and support. Any additional questions for Becky?
Great job.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Keep it up.
Do you ever
Thanks.
get people complaining about this farmer and that farmer, and he had a higher criteria, and he says, I can raise the same crops as he did, and why is it mine higher?
We've never had anybody complain, but we have had calls from landowners saying, you know, why didn't I get selected? And so we can take that criteria and walk through point by point, you know, this is what your soil type was, this is what you're producing, you did or didn't have a conservation plan, you were or were not meat verified, the farms around you are or are not still agricultural, you're X distance from water and sewer. So we have all these different criteria, and they're very cut and dry, which is exactly what we want. You know, we do have a clause in the ordinance that allows the board at its discretion to reprioritize. And if we do that, and we have done that once in the past, we have to have very solid reasoning to do that. And that was, you know, kind of financially, the property we wanted to select, we had no hope of getting enough money to preserve. So we switched to a property where we could feasibly finance it. So that's the only time we've changed, but we've only had landowners call with questions. You know, the one in question was in Crockery Township. And quite frankly, most of the points come from soil type, and they really should. And theirs just wasn't there. It just didn't hit it. They had some woods on their property. The soil type wasn't great. And there was just no way they were ever going to score high enough. And they shouldn't. If it's not high quality, productive agricultural land, it's not what we want to spend our money on. So.
One last question. Do you ever split the farm up because of that criteria?
We will give landowners an option to do that. For example, we have one that we're in the process of preserving right now. He's got 2 parcels that'll be covered under the easement. We weren't sure at the time, because it's a long process, if we'd have enough money to do both parcels. So we did talk to the landowner and say, you know, are you just dead set on doing both of these parcels, or would you be able to split and just put the easement on one and maybe come back and reapply another year? We didn't have to do that. We should be able to fund both the parcels, but we will do that. And you can put several parcels under one easement. Broncomus, for example, is going to be 5 different parcels. So yeah, we can split and change and modify.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Any additional questions? Thank you, Becky.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and support. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, the same sign. Motion passes. Under discussion items, we have the biannual county newsletter.
Thank you, Greg. I had heard that there were some comments or opinions that we should discontinue the biannual county newsletter, and just wanted to have a discussion of that at the committee level, because if you recall, I think we've had 2 editions so far, and I won't speak for Shannon, but I know for me, I was like, boy, do we really need to do this? And the board had said, hey, not everyone has a computer, not everyone gets Gov delivery, not everyone can read the online Administrator's Digest. And I think it was pretty fair to say that when the first one went out, I know a lot of you reported a lot of positive feedback from residents about the newsletter. I even received some positive feedback on it as well. And we now have done 2 of them. We have it in the budget for the current fiscal year to keep doing it twice a year. And I just wanted to have a discussion You know, with the committee and if the board itself, if it truly does want to discontinue this, because it seemed like you guys had a pretty favorable or positive opinion of the newsletter. Shannon, did you want to go into
Sure.
some of the statistics here?
Sure, gentlemen. I put together just some basic high level statistics that I have from my communications that I do year in and year out. The first page just shows our social media following through the county since 2017. As you can see, we've really increased that a lot. The second page talks about our email communication system. There is a cost to this system, just over $37,000. Every year, we usually have a 3 to 5% increase on that particular system that will renew in May, pending board approval. Right now, you can see we have a great deal of subscribers at nearly 136,000 email subscribers. So while that is important, I'd like to draw your attention to the next page of email engagement rate. So we have a lot of subscribers. Well, are they interacting with us? Are they clicking on our emails? Are they opening on our emails? And in 2022, 73% of our subscribers are actually opening our emails, maybe clicking on links within those emails, which is extremely high compared to the book of business that our system GovDelivery has. They average about 51% with their email engagement rate. And then the last portion, the last 2 pages are information from our 2021 citizen survey. This is before the county did the snail mail newsletter. The first question was, do you think Ottawa County is doing enough, too much, or should be doing more to inform residents about county programs and services? 47% of residents thought enough was being done. 46% of residents thought more should be done. And then that last page, their preferred source of information. So we ask residents, we give them a laundry list of ways that the county communicates with its residents. Interestingly, mail was number 1 at just over 25%, followed by email, then social media, which are some of the ways that we communicate. When it comes to TV news, newspaper and radio news, those items are all encapsulated in email as we send press releases through that avenue. The cost for the annual newsletter last year was about $91,000. That second number is how many residents received our newsletter. The reason for that increase in the mailing one of 119,000 versus 112,000 is because we removed Halligan from that list. I learned a new word today and I really like it. So yes. So we were able to remove that group of folks from our mailing list. However, with costs of commodities going up in our world, the price of the newsletter did increase despite that removal. So I give you a lot of information. However, there really isn't a great deal of information that would support the newsletter versus against the newsletter. I think that there's probably conflicting information and information that would support either choice you make.
Remember Ally talked about something about Walk for Warmth. It's the most money they ever raised because we put that newsletter out. Well, that's something we got to keep in mind too. So, you know.
Yeah, a couple of questions, Shannon.
Sure.
On your subscriber change page.
Absolutely.
I noticed that it jumped from 46,600 to 522.
Yes, it did.
136. I'm assuming that because of the pandemic.
Absolutely. So what often happens in the communication world is when we have an unfortunate circumstance and an emergency, people become very engaged with our services and with our communications. The upside of that is that they continue to stay engaged. And we did see that while the COVID specific communications went down, our engagement rate still was much higher than our 2019 engagement rate of 59% versus 73% in 2022. Some of the popular categories, I think actually the Administrator's Digest is the most subscribed to category at about 30,000 subscribers. Parks has a lot of subscribers in their information as well.
So John, I like your letter. Wow, see?
Well,
Well, actually,
Shanny gets the credit for that. She helps out immensely on that.
right, actually, I was gonna point out that there was a drop between 2020 and 2022. I wonder if that was when John came on.
Well, in all seriousness, Frank, one thing that happens when we haven't used a list in a while, and admittedly, Al was preoccupied with many other things towards the end of his tenure. There was a lot of busyness going on. And so the Administrators Digest did wane quite a bit. That email list was sleeping, so to speak. The system automatically, once we use it again, if any of those emails are bad, bounce back, it will automatically remove people from the list. So some of those things, whether it be email addresses from COVID or new email addresses that we haven't used in a while, bouncing back, that sort of thing. So we do know that all of those 136,000 subscribers that are current as of today are actual valid email addresses.
And these are folks who actually have asked to receive the newsletter. It's not every household in Allegan minus Allegan or whatever.
With the mailing, with the snail mail, this is done by residential households. So there's a mailing company that we use who is able to draw boundaries. And they receive it regardless of whether they've subscribed to it. The email system is something that folks opt into. So they go on our website, they read a communication on social media, they receive an email that's forwarded to them from another person, then they can opt in to subscribe to our email address or to our email system by putting in their email address or sometimes even their phone number. And we'll do text messaging as well with certain topics.
So is it possible that instead of sending an actual newsletter through the mail, to do it via email possibly, and that would change, obviously would be less costly?
Sure. What I've done with the newsletter content in the past is with a lot of information, I use a system called COPE, create once, publish everywhere. So with the newsletter topics, we had some various topics about, for instance, the Marine Patrol. That was a really interesting story. I think people were very engaged with the pictures that were in the newsletter, although this is just speculation. But I took that story and I was able to, because it was written for the newsletter, I was able to throw it into a digest. I was able to create a social media post with that story. So the content that does end up in the newsletter does also go out in other ways too, so that we can repurpose and make sure that we are giving people the messages through many modes of communication, because everybody has different preferences, as you can see from that last graph.
Shannon, how many households did the newsletter get sent to?
The first edition went to 119,000 and the second edition went to 112,000, again, because of the removal of Halligan.
If you put the whole newsletter, like the last one, put it on email, how would you email that? Because that would be
8 pages.
8 pages. That would be a load on some people's email.
Well,
They would take a while to load up.
a few things with that. First of all, I would not send it as a PDF.
Okay.
If you would like something not read, I highly encourage you to send it to people as a PDF. Most people would prefer to open their email and read the content directly in the email.
Yeah.
So I would not send it in that manner. And that's how our email system works, is we create HTML emails that open right in the body of an email. I would take those stories and I would place them in an administrator's digest as they are, as it makes sense. Maybe I could take stories, these good news stories, as we've tried to put into the newsletter, and send them to subscribers of certain topics. I could, take those stories, like I said, and make them social media posts for people to consume in that way. Sure, we could send that information out as an HTML email. However, the difference being is that we only have email addresses for those who have opted in to subscribe to county email. The county newsletter that is sent through the mail is sent to every residential address that we have using the mailing system external company we work with.
Is there an idea of what would be the cost difference between sending an actual handheld newsletter versus an email? If you cut it by half, would it cut it by a third?
So an email itself, using the Gov delivery system, we already pay for.
Yeah.
That cost is already, eaten in our administrative costs that we renew every year. I think it's about $37,000 a year. The email or the newsletter that we send twice a year is about $45,000 per edition. That includes printing, postage, and buying the mailing list.
It's no doubt it's less expensive to email it.
Absolutely.
And we had that conversation before when we were talking about the newsletter in general. And again, the comments from the board were, that's a true statement, but we have a lot of people that, may not have computers or really are good with technology and want a piece of paper. And so Shannon's, graph there in terms of preferred source of information, the number one preference is mail. And then the other thing I know in our strategic planning session, I know one of the, I think it was the 6 goals that you guys put forth was to increase transparency and trust in government. So this was one attempt to try to, again, always improve the level of communication that we have with residents. So there's absolutely a cost. It's more to do it this way, but it does reach everyone. And we have allocated the money in this year's budget. Obviously, the board has the discretion to say, no, we don't want to do it anymore. But just based on feedback I've heard from all of you and that I've heard directly, it's been very well received.
The big difference I see is that when people get this, they may open it and they may start to look at it, but the difference is when they get it in the mail, they're gonna set it aside and look at it, read it. It's gonna be sitting around for several days. And not just one person looks at it. The family, the husband, wife, kids might look at it. Who knows, right? So if it's sent as an email, the possibility of reading it through might be one person, right, in that household. If even that person takes the time to read through 8 pages of an email, which I don't normally do, except for getting ready for these things. You get 200 and some pages to look through. And of course, all the legalese that Doug supplies us with, we all read that. Point by
Sure,
point.
every word.
Yeah, point by point.
Ponder.
We do, yes, we do.
I look forward to those every night.
I'm just saying, I think mail is still a much better way to go.
We
I
haven't
think
had it.
the,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Red, I think that the concept of the newsletter ought to continue because I think it's very informative. Unfortunately, it's only for those folks who have subscribed to it. And I know that if we want to expand it to all households, now we're talking about a lot of money here. I, for one, would like to see it continued. I'm not yet sold that it has to be something that you can hold in your hand, which when I read a book, I like to have the book actually in my hands and not on the screen, even though. And I agree with Roger that a handheld, it might be read by a teenager, which is bored listening to mom and dad, and so forth. So, I see the plus there.
I like to see if we can expand that to as many households as possible without waiting for them to subscribe, but I know that's another cost there.
So we have not done a citizen survey since we've done the email. We are scheduled to do a citizen survey, which is where the last 2 pages of information has come. We'll be doing one, I think, this spring with the results this summer. There may be information that we glean from there that would be valuable for this decision-making in the future. When I see that they prefer to receive information by mail, I don't think they're thinking about their property tax bill. But other than that, we really don't communicate much by mail. So it is interesting that does float to the top.
The old survey back in 2021, 47% said enough is being done. That was before the newsletter. So, and you got 1% saying there too much is being done. I don't know. I'm looking at some of this and saying, nope, no more. I don't know. And I don't know, let the new board spend the money. Let them see what they want to do.
Was budgeted already, John, right? Correct?
Yeah, it's in this year's budget, and the first two, the first one I think went out in January, and the second one went out, I believe, in June or July. Yeah. And so if this is the time where Shannon starts to put it together, because, and I might be off on this, it might be 4 or 5 weeks once we're done with it for them to be able to print it and mail it as well. So it's
Right, so we begin to put it together now, and we go to print, or we go to the printers December 15th. And usually January 15th is when it starts to hit mailboxes.
Technically, this has already been approved. So in order for us to stop this process, we would have to present to the board a motion to stop the printing of a new newsletter.
So I sit on that committee, and I remember some of the comments of it, and one of them was that, John, that your digest has gotten better and better because you've got a little bit more time, you're more acclimated, you've got a assistant coming on real soon. So those are some of the comments that I heard. That I also heard that we wanted to make sure going forward that this wasn't a political platform for anybody.
absolutely, and it hasn't been.
It hasn't been so far, okay? But it could easy be a political platform going forward. And so we were concerned about that. And I echo what Al said, because there was conversation about, let's put it on hold and let's let the new board decide if it's a valuable tool or not. But again, I just don't want this thing to be a political platform. We've been very cautious about that. Make sure it's county issues, what's going on. It's not commissioner gratification that's going on. And so I'm just, those are my concerns.
Well, and maybe but that's where the discussion ought to be headed to, whether we ought to put some guidelines or procedures in writing to make sure that it doesn't become a political platform, but that it becomes more of it making our county residents aware of what the county does. Because I know that the number one question I would get as a county commissioner is, well, what do you do? And I don't, well, okay, I'll leave the joke out, but you. Frank, you sure? You aren't sure yet, right? Yeah. I think it would look like a political move if we were to not continue it at the same time. So let me be quite frank on that. So I think we ought to continue with it, especially because we already have it in the budget. But I also believe that there ought to be some guidelines to ensure that it doesn't become a political tool for whoever is sitting here in the future. Is there a way to do that, Doug?
Well, the law does that. And reminding ourselves of the law on that point is a great idea.
Yep.
Because it cannot be, public funds can't be used for political purposes. So it has to be educational only. We have kind of rules that we've developed for millage information. You know, it's the same thing
Oh,
there.
yeah. Millage, you can't promote a millage.
Yeah, but
can't
you
promote it.
you can provide information on what it's gonna be used
We can't
for,
promote it.
why the perceived need for it, things like that. So there are rules in this area. There are attorney general opinions in the area, so it's a good idea just to remind everyone involved in the process that those rules apply here equally.
So I think John and Shannon are gonna make sure that, they're gonna have to make sure that. those
Yeah, we did
rules-
that with the first two, Frank, there were, we wanted to make sure everything was factually based. It wasn't promoting a ballot issue or opposing or promoting a candidate or opposing a candidate. And that's what we would continue to do. And as Doug stated, it's the law. We can't use it for that. Now, if this goes through, I mean, obviously this would go to the printers in December. And, so it would be done by the end of this year. It just wouldn't be mailed out till next year. I just think it's been well received by the residents and I saw the graph there and there's probably no way you can over communicate. I think 1% said we're over communicating. So I think it's a great communication piece for the board and I think it reaches an audience that doesn't necessarily read the Administrator's Digest or the Gov delivery because they
I
don't get
believe we should
computers.
ask Shannon to proceed.
I agree.
I don't, but
I think it should go to the entire board for vote. And if we're gonna change horses in the middle of the stream, because 2 weeks ago, they collectively decided not to go forward. And I think.
Three of us there,
Pardon me?
there's only three of us there.
Yeah, but you can't help that though, maybe we just, sometimes you can't get everybody to the meeting, and I understand that. But
if you put your commissioners' names, whose names you're gonna put in there?
elected ones.
Okay. But we're making decisions for them.
Well, no, we're making decisions for the people that know who their elected official is. That's not political at all. I mean, everybody in the county should know who their elected official is. I mean, it's really people want to know. Like, wow, I had no idea. So I'd totally be good with that.
Yeah.
I'm good with moving to the full board.
I think that'd be fair for everybody. I think it'd be respectful for everybody to move to the full board.
So we can put it as an action item on the agenda for the full board meeting next.
Well, I guess I'm a little concerned in the sense
where's
that
that?
we've already approved the budget for it.
We just want to amend the budget is what you're saying?
No, well, I like, again, I heard comments and I just wanted to have this discussion because we weren't planning to go honestly to the board. It's in the budget.
Mhm.
The board approved that, so we were gonna just do the newsletter, then. I had heard comments that, hey, we might not want to do this, so I wanted to have a discussion at the committee level. But it's in the budget, so we were not seeking board approval to do it because you guys already approved it.
Well, so in a way, we've already approved it for the next.
Correct.
Yeah, you've
Already.
allocated money in the current fiscal
Yeah.
year for this newsletter.
But we allocated more money at different times and haven't spent it.
Yeah,
I mean, you can't say that we always spend every dime we budget.
yeah, so the board would, could make could have a vote to say we don't want to do it. I don't know if you necessarily have to have a vote to do it because you've already allocated the money to do it.
And I can understand that we haven't always spent every money that we've allocated, but this is a case where the only thing that has changed is the names possibly for the next newsletter. And I don't know if that is enough for us to even be considering not to proceed with something that everything that we have done in the past with our names on it, we're not going to take all of that back. So this one, we're thinking that some of us may want to take it back. And I think that's not a good message to send. But that's my opinion.
I agree, Frank.
So by taking it,
I still believe out of respect for the other board members, we should bring it to them.
I do too.
I just, but
Well, if you need a motion, I'll make a motion not to bring it.
I'll second that motion.
we have a motion.
To what? Not bring it to the board.
Right,
Because it's been already approved.
because it's already been approved, right?
The money has been approved.
Yeah.
not the
And-
letter itself.
And the letter has been approved also.
I thought you were working on that for December.
So we did it already?
Well, no, we haven't done it.
No, we haven't done it. I mean, the board itself didn't approve
Well, any of the other news.
any of the other newsletter content. I mean, that never came before.
Had input.
Yeah.
Absolutely, but there wasn't a formal vote ever at the board to say we approved issuing this specific.
Yeah,
newsletter.
I never saw the newsletter until it hit my house.
Right, that is correct.
So the motion, Roger, is what again?
To not bring it forward. To let it go. As it is. To not bring it to the board. For a vote. To stop it.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Any additional discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Pose the same sign.
Aye.
Volume wise was really close.
Yeah.
Greg, it was his vote.
You want a roll call there?
All right, we'll move on. Thank you.
I think it was a good discussion.
It was a great discussion.
Yes,
And we can't always agree, okay?
No,
But we,
right.
but we can always leave in unity.
there you go. And thanks for the donuts.
You're welcome.
You thought them dollars were gonna get you a vote, didn't you?
Been working.
I should have brought pig in the plate.
I've been bought by a donut.
Yeah.
We've got a couple meetings to go yet, okay? So moving forward, legislative issues, John?
Right along.
Yeah.
We suspect because there really aren't any days that the legislature is actually in session. There's not a lot of movement on this, other than the first bill there, allow remote participation, in open meetings. The representative has introduced another bill besides this to amend the Open Meetings Act that really doesn't make really substantive changes. So we wouldn't be taking a position on that. It's likely this first bill may not proceed. The only other change here that we've seen is on the short-term rental bill, which would be really number 5. That did recently move out of the Committee on Regulatory Reform and referred to the Committee of the Whole. So again, with short-term rentals, we think that should be left up to the local units to decide how to handle that. And so we'll see where that goes. Other than that, there hasn't been any movement, and we didn't expect there to be any movement because I think when Bob was here, they had two days they'd be in session between mid-September and the election. So we'll probably see a lot more activity come after the election, after the election and the end of the year during the lame duck period.
Bill, what was Roger saying last week about that short-term rental? He was talking something about that they were moving forward on it.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
he really didn't have a answer that was in granite for us at the
Yeah.
chamber, did you think? I mean, because they.
No, but I mentioned to him that, if they went forward, it sounded like they were going forward that, and I said, so Park Township is gonna be all up in the air, because of the fact that they've been working hard on putting together a plan that's been very difficult for them in Park Township, right, Frank?
I'm sorry, I wasn't listening.
The short-term rental issue in
Park
in Park.
Township. You got a couple.
Well, I know that they put some ordinances in place, but I mean, I don't know if it's been completely approved by the board yet.
I don't think it's nothing's gonna go through until.
You know,
Lame
my
duck.
concern is
After
that
the
all of,
election.
I mean,
Yeah,
you know, when
absolutely.
it comes to the lame duck, all of these could pass, or none of them will pass.
Correct.
But most likely, the majority of things pass during lame duck. Yeah.
I think I don't believe there are any legislative sessions left between now and the election anyway. They're out campaigning.
Yeah.
So I don't think you'll see, I would agree with Bill and you, Frank, that we'll see probably a lot of action after the election and before the end of the year.
John, we have a meeting with our legislators, I think, coming up. Didn't I see that sometime in November?
After the election.
Yeah, I
After
think
the
we were
election.
trying to set some up between after the election and before Thanksgiving, because then there would be a lot more potential activity, and then we could have hopefully the
And who
ability.
is that for again? I mean, who gets invited to that?
Those are usually, I think, the board chair, finance chair, planning and policy chair, maybe the vice chair as well.
Okay, but not our townships and stuff like that.
Correct, because the bigger the audience, the less frank the legislators will be. I mean, that's just the way it is.
And Bob DeVries.
Yes, yep, he'll be there.
Wasn't there a local unit government meeting
Today.
Yeah,
But that's not legislative.
right.
It's not legislative. That's just talking about services that we provide and.
Yeah.
And updates like that, but not.
Okay.
Can we confirm for our November meeting that these folks will be here?
I'll ask Stephanie. She's the one that does the confirmation on that, but I'll ask her.
Say they will be here.
Yeah, I know that.
The day before. Oh, I can't.
Yeah, it gets a little disappointing when you plan your schedule to meet with
Yeah.
these folks. And
Right
then-
now I have it for Thursday, November 17th
Yeah.
at 11 a.m.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I maybe just before, Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, I wanted to have, I know some of you have been contacted by Senator Victory's office. And I just, on the opioid settlement and the fact that we've disputed it, and that's caused some heartburn for certain organizations and so forth. So I just wanted Doug to maybe just give a quick update and clarification of what we're doing and that we're not holding up the entire country's
United
settlement.
States of America, matter of fact.
Yeah,
So I have not been contacted by CNN yet.
that's right.
There is a very interesting overlay between, what is happening in the federal litigation and then what's happening in Michigan. Our dispute only applies to the Michigan distribution, so it involves no other states whatsoever. It's only Michigan. Now, when we disputed the distribution that our community, this is big C benefit that our community is giving, that necessarily holds up Michigan's, because if we get more, someone else has to get less. There's a zero-sum game here. All right, so there is an element in which we're applying the ointment on the Michigan distribution. The more I look at this thing, and since we had our board meeting, I've gone back to look at the agreement between the Attorney General and these lawyers. The uglier, frankly, it gets. Because, and this is where there's an overlap. I don't know if the federal judge in Cleveland will do anything about our dispute. If he doesn't, under the agreement between the Attorney General and the local units, we can challenge that agreements formula in state court if we choose. But the federal judge recognized that there were lawyers, including the Bernstein firm, that might have done something to produce the overall settlement with Johnson & Johnson and the other opioid makers. He created a fund to pay the principal lawyers and also those lawyers for any contribution that they made. The state agreement, gotta love this because it was drafted by these lawyers, forces them to go to that fund first. But if the administrator of that fund determines they didn't do anything, or they only did, I don't know, $100,000 worth, then they get the rest of their 15% from the state money. So after being determined that they did nothing, they then get the rest of their $40 million from the 400 million that's going to local government. What's worse is that to keep their own clients quiet, all of their clients get basically on average, a 15% bump, which is coincidentally the amount of their attorney's fees if they get nothing from the federal fund. So, yeah, we've thrown a monkey wrench in, and the federal court may say, I'm supervising every dollar here. And it's supposed to go to the people who were affected by this epidemic now and in the next 20 years. And if we've determined in this lawsuit that those lawyers did nothing to bring this money to the table, I'm not gonna let even Michigan siphon some of, in this case, 10% of the local share to those people. So that's a possibility that our little fly in the ointment may draw to the federal judge in Cleveland. So yeah, they don't like it. They don't like what we're doing because they've carefully constructed this so that their clients don't even have to write them a check. They're taking it off the top. So Kent County, which is allocated to take 15% of its total return to the Bernstein firm, will never have to publicly approve that check. That's how devious this structure is. So yes, I've thrown a wrench into their sweet little deal and they don't like it. They've called me, why don't you just drop it? There's a special circumstances fund. And my response to them was, what are our special circumstances other than we're getting screwed like everyone else that doesn't come out favorably in this stupid formula that you have that only tries to distribute the money for 20 years based on 1 year's statistics on prescribed drugs when most of this is unprescribed. Most of the abuse is not happening because doctor gave you that much. It's because you got hooked and you either went to heroin, fentanyl, or you went to the open market and got your extra drugs, which aren't being recorded by anyone by definition. So the whole thing, the formula is bad. And what these lawyers are doing here, to me is unconscionable. There's ethically, we're only supposed to work on a contingency fee if the client can't pay an hourly fee. So this thing was unethical from the get-go. And now we're seeing that that lack of ethics permeate the very formula and the very agreement. It really is. Thank goodness we did appeal because some of these clients are finally learning what's really happening here and they're sickened too. So that's an update. I don't know who's calling you, but the fact that they call you and not me.
Were we
Is it
the only
telltale
county, Doug, who actually has questioned this settlement?
We're of all the townships, cities, counties, we're the only ones that objected. But you know why, Frank? Because these lawyers didn't even tell like Kent County, gee, we can't represent you because we represent Macomb here, which is getting 27 million. And Kent, which is just slightly smaller than Macomb, is getting 10. But maybe you should hire a lawyer to look at whether you should dispute this formula. They didn't want people looking at it. And I believe it's because they poke around and see the attorney's fees component is all out of whack. But one of the reasons I told you not to do the fee agreement with them is in Michigan law, had they gone to trial, the only damages they could have pursued were not the big C damages for which money is being distributed, but the little c corporate damages, and we really don't have any. It's like these lawyers said to me on the tobacco settlement, how much did Ottawa County get? I said, I don't know, 0. Well, we got 0 because we don't have any damages from tobacco. The state does, and they grant to the health department and to CMH some money to get to the people. But that's where this thing has gone off the rails. And, I have seen nothing to suggest we should not redouble our efforts to get equity because we may be the ones to make a responsible distribution to all of Michigan. And maybe at least if these lawyers end up with the money and some judge says they get it, fine. But right now, I think
where are we in the litigation part?
anyone who objects to our dispute
Okay,
has to file, the court said, a response by October 20th, which is what, Thursday?
Friday, Saturday,
Friday.
Thursday, Friday.
Friday. Friday.
Thursday.
Yeah, 2 days.
Thursday.
Okay.
So by Thursday, they need to respond to us. Now, if they do or they don't, I assume that the federal court administrator is gonna have to rule on our dispute, and I assume that we'll have some hearing or something where I can raise all these issues and, why are we losing 15% of our, basically they're getting a bump. Why that money's coming from Ottawa? Why is that happening? Because they didn't produce any of that. Why are they getting that bump? So, even the attorney's fees issue, which really isn't our issue, except that it's affecting our distribution. And, hopefully someone else will come in and say, even in Kent County, you didn't get any money for Kent County corporately, which is the one that signed you up. You couldn't sue for the big C damages. Why are you getting 15% of the big C damages when the federal court is itself said you don't deserve anything because you didn't bring any of the dollars to the table? So it's gonna get ugly, and I'm gonna be the focus of the ugliness. If we ever have this hearing, it's gonna be a 30 lawyer gang up on Doug, but that's the kind of fight I like.
Yeah. I don't know if you heard about, there's a big lawsuit with Camp Lejeune Water.
Oh, yeah.
Like every other evening.
Yes.
Yeah.
Couple of quick questions,
Can we move on?
a couple of quick questions if I can just ask Doug. It's my understanding that we didn't, originally joined that lawsuit. Is that correct?
We had an I filed an appearance
Mhm.
and I'm just watching it because I knew the Attorney General was gonna get all the money, and she did. What I didn't know is she was gonna give half of it to the local units of government, which have Narcan. If we use a can of Narcan, that's reimbursable. So under Michigan law, you can't sue for community damages if you're Ottawa County. And I didn't see where we had damages, and I was worried that they would take all of our big C distribution and claim that that's their result of their efforts, which it obviously isn't. Other than the 15%, we're getting the same distribution as Kent. Now, they used a bad formula, which screws Kent too, but we didn't have to pay 15% of our recovery for our community. And thank goodness we didn't join.
So the question that was presented to me is why didn't we know this and show up and talk about this at the federal decision? Because it changed when it came to state of Michigan?
Because exactly at the federal court, first of all, I'm appealing within the federal court. So it's the federal, when they say this is affecting the federal court case, they're sort of right. It's affecting the Michigan part of it. But this is the process. We responded. We didn't even get the notice, by the way. We found out about it with 3 days to 2 days to go, and we quickly filed our dispute. But that was the avenue in the federal court to object. So when they say that, they're being wholly inconsistent. They say you're throwing the whole federal case in an uproar. No, we're throwing Michigan in an uproar pursuant to the notice we got. And we filed a timely dispute, which they don't like. And they tried to sweep this thing through. That's the only reason no one else was appealed. No one else really understood what was going on.
Or even knew, right?
Well, they got a notice, but the notice doesn't tell you how they turn the crank. And it doesn't, even now, I don't know what data they use. I don't know what year they picked. I don't, these lawyers said to me, well, this process is only supposed to be about math, whether the administrator abused the math. I said, where are the calculations in the notice? How am I supposed to appeal a mathematical calculation that isn't revealed? That's how devious this thing was. So, yeah, I'm not surprised no one else knew what to do. And they just see the dollar amounts. Oh, good, we're getting some money. Had no damages and I'm getting $2.5 million. Now, the other thing is, they're supposed to spend it, and I know I'm going on and on, but they're supposed to spend it on opioid abatement. But I don't know who's gonna monitor that. Our townships and stuff are thinking, I don't know, take this year's $1,000 and what are we gonna, no one's gonna be fly specking how they spend that money. So that's another thing where the people who are victimized by this are getting screwed. So obviously I'm fired up about it, but
Yeah, thank you.
good, Doug. You bet.
Well, so we've gone from the most respected county to the most hated county. No.
Right? We're saying we want our 10 million or 20, whatever, and
Let's go after them.
You guys all set now?
All set.
yeah.
Next on our agenda again is a second opportunity for public comment. Seeing none, thank you all for a lively meeting this morning. A meeting I thought was gonna be 15 minutes, it's a little longer, so thank you. We got a lot accomplished this morning. And the motion, I need a motion to adjourn today's meeting.
So moved.
Sport.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.